Hello. In this presentation, I offer an introduction to TOC, Theory of Constraints for Managers. First, about the term TOC, Theory of Constraints. I personally feel that it was a mistake to call this domain of management a theory. I respect that at the time when Eli Goldratt started to develop this methodology, it looked like a very theoretical approach to managing a business. However, today, the managers I worked with did not appreciate the proposal that they should apply a theory in their work. Rather, they wanted a practice. So today, I prefer to call this domain constraint-focused management, which managers accept much better as something that helps to do their difficult job. Here is an overview of my presentation. In the first part, I'm going to introduce you to three key terms of constraint-focused management: how we must view our business as a system, what the goal of a business is, and what a constraint is. In the second part, I will present four key tools for managers: the goal chart to track progress to the goal, the five-step process to resolve a constraint, how to find a constraint, and constraint-focused business plans. Part 3 then sums up what managers must do, which principles they must follow to use the constraint-focused approach, and in Part 4 I will share a few books that helped me personally a lot in this subject. Key aspect number 1, viewing business as a system. Traditionally, when we talk about a business, we think of its organization chart, of the pyramid of units and their managers. Here on the left, you see in this picture the org chart view for Boeing Corporation, with the board on the left and two levels of their organizational pyramid below. Already when he started developing his theory of constraints, Eli Goldratt stated that this org chart view does not really allow to understand constraints in a business. A business should be viewed as a system, a network of interacting functions. Such a view of Boeing you see on the right side of this picture. It shows Boeing at the center of a network of companies to which Boeing relates. Goldratt stated as key principle for constraint-focused management, or you could say as key platform for that approach, that a business must be viewed as a system with this definition: our business system comprises all elements which either support or hinder us to achieve our goal. This definition offers several insights. First, the business system's purpose is to achieve a goal. Second, that goal determines the elements of the business system. Example, if our goal is to take a walk on Kahlenberg near Vienna, we need a different system than if we want to climb Mount Everest. If we want to build electric cars, we need a different business system than if we fly to the moon. Third point, the business system also includes elements outside of the company itself. Compared to the organization chart, which only contains internal elements, the system goes way beyond the internal functions, includes anything that can support or hinder the approach to the goal. Item 4, a business system is a living system, constantly adapting itself to new situations and challenges. This is evident if we recognize our role of company management as the nervous system of our business. The job of the nervous system is threefold. First, cognition, which means to observe and take in information about what goes on, both externally and within the company. Then, knowledge, acquiring and storing experiences on how to cope with information, which conclusions to take from them. And adaptation, which means to execute the right actions to respond. In human beings, the nervous system does this job. If your toe is injured, your nervous system observes and tells the brain, hey, there's a problem down here. The brain has now knowledge how to react and tells your body, sit down, take off your sock, identify the problem, and then tells you what to do to adapt to the new situation. If the nervous system works well in the company system, the company will be healthy and happy. If, however, it is sick, if it does not recognize, if it does not have knowledge, or if it doesn't know how to adapt, or management refuses to accept information by ignoring competitors or new technology developments or employee dissatisfaction, then the company will get in trouble. Fish start smelling at the head, as they say. Let us now have a closer look at the goal for a business system. In systems thinking, we recognize that a living system links its elements by flow of matter, energy, and information. This flow is what keeps the system going. Flow of product through the supply chain, flow of information from product development to sales to customers, flow of money from customers into the company, flow, flow, flow. And the goal of any living system is to sustain this flow for now and for the future. In constraint-focused management, Goldratt found the flow of income as the vital flow for a living business system. More precisely, he found contribution margin, the difference between income and variable cost, to be the essential flow. Having sufficient contribution margin makes a business achieve other goals, like profit, cash flow, etc., but also enables it to go beyond just internal goals, like caring for the environment. So, in terms of constraint-focused management, we view sufficient flow of income, contribution margin, as the goal. And in constraint management, the technical term is throughput. It is another term for flow. It is not efficiency or cost model. It is flow of income. In consequence, in this view, it is a big mistake to state as a goal for a merger to save cost. Instead, a merger's goal must be increased income. This has been found and pointed out since years and still happens a lot that companies that merge announce that they're going to save a lot of cost, and they never do. And it results in most mergers actually failing because putting cost saving as the goal is just a big mistake. What then about the other things we typically call goals, like customer satisfaction, product and service quality, process cost? What, for instance, about balanced scorecard, which recommend not just one single, but 4 categories of goal: financial, customers, processes, and potential? Goldratt has answered this question by introducing a term from formal logic, the necessary condition. In general, a necessary condition is one which must be present in order for another condition to occur. Or in our case, a necessary condition is one which must be present for the system to achieve the goal. Setting the goal of income as prime goal positions many other goals as necessary conditions. In business system terms, to achieve its goal, some elements must meet certain conditions, must perform at certain levels. Customer satisfaction may be a necessary condition or not. Product quality may be a necessary condition or not. It depends on the situation. If you have a monopoly, maybe customer satisfaction is not a necessary condition for you to achieve your goal. Like in this case, in this picture, the goal is to land in New York, and the necessary conditions are sufficient fuel, approach permitted, all engines working, and so on and so on. Several necessary conditions to achieve the goal. Now let's have a look at the third key term, the constraint. Viewing our business as a system aimed to achieve our goal, we can now state what a constraint is. A constraint is something that hinders us to reach our goal. It is the cause for us not reaching our goal. Let's take a closer look. In this case, a true case which I experienced with one of my clients as sales manager, and we enjoyed fantastic order growth from 1994 to 1998, and then suddenly growth stopped. Actually, orders dropped. Now we can see a difference in how managers may react. Traditional management practice is A, to cut cost, reduce budget for this sales team, maybe reduce the staffing for this client. And B, lay off salespeople because we may consider them incompetent. In other words, our answer is cut cost. Constraint-focused management says this is completely wrong and crazy. Constraint-focused management reacts very differently. A, to recognize any growing system can be expected to run into a constraint. This is just how nature behaves. Nothing can grow without running into a constraint. And B, that we find out what is the constraint, and C, we resolve it. And then the next, and the next, and the next. In other words, traditional management focuses on cost, while constraint-focused management focuses on system flow or system throughput. To illustrate a constraint, this is a clogged artery, with the clog being the limiting factor for the flow of blood. Does really not look good. Another example. Take a look. What is the constraint? Let us remember the key aspects of a constraint-focused view. First, a constraint hinders us to reach our goal, from which we conclude before we can state a constraint, we must first understand the goal. So let us ask first, what is the goal? Well, whose goal? The owner of the car inside the garage who want to get out? Or the owner of the car who wanted to park his car? Only if this is clear, we can start to understand and describe and verbalize the constraint. In our business system, it is not quite as easy. Constraint view makes a difference between three terms. First, the undesired effect. What happens and we don't want it. In our example, sales grew and then suddenly stopped to grow. This, by the way, is a real example of a large computer company. Second item is symptoms. Problems appearing in our business systems element. Remember, they can be inside or outside of our own organization. And third, the root cause constraint, the source of this undesired effect. These terms show us that actually we face a causal network where, in most real cases I found, one or sometimes two root causes result in a sea of trouble and in the end of missing the goal. If we don't find the root cause and resolve it, the undesired effect will not go away. Same happens when we resolve the wrong cause. Example? George W. Bush declared Saddam Hussein as the constraint to be removed. They did, and things got worse afterwards than better. Wrong analysis of a constraint. This was part one, getting clarity on three key terms for constraint-focused management. Viewing our business as a system and not as an org chart. Having a clear goal for that system, contribution margin or throughput. Understanding a constraint as something that hinders us to reach the goal, and a causal tree throughout our business system. Now let us look at tools for managers to cope with constraints in their business. First, and for me, absolutely number one, the goal chart. It is not sufficient to define a goal. We must manage to tracking how we perform to our goal. This is the key indicator to tell us if flow in our system is healthy or constrained. Here is an example of a goal chart of a very successful business. This was Fujitsu Siemens in Central Eastern Europe. This management team did a superb job. Not only did they track and closely follow their overall goal, they also followed their sub-goals in detail by geography and product line. So they could immediately respond to individual constraints, and they did. You can see that they faced a growing constraint in the last period tracked, which later they resolved and continue to grow following their goal. A super team of excellent managers using constraint-focused management at its best. As manager, you must have a goal chart. If you don't have one, you haven't even started to do your job. Tool number 2 is the 5-step process to resolve a constraint. This is a Goldratt classic. Step 1, identify the constraint. Much easier said than done. Many managers have educated the people not to tell them about problems. Never tell a vice president about a problem is a rule of survival in many companies. How can VW top management not be informed about engine manipulations? How can Boeing top management not be informed about software manipulations in their piloting system? Listen, listen, listen. Ask questions, questions, questions is the road to understand a constraint. Unfortunately, many managers rather talk and tell and seldom or never ask questions. Identifying the constraint means taking the leadership to ask a question and find the answer. What constrains our business system? Step 2, exploit the constraint. Do not invest to resolve in this step. Wring maximum performance out of the constraint. Reorganize, redefine whatever element you are working on and that appears to be the constraint, so that in that element flow increases. You may first need to resolve a conflict. Goldratt very brilliantly identified that constraints often cannot even be found as long as differing assumptions keep managers apart from each other. This is what actually a conflict is. Different assumptions how to achieve a goal. To learn more about this, if that's of interest to you, there is a beautiful tool called the conflict resolution diagram, which you find in the Goldratt literature. Step 3, subordinate everything else to your decision in step 2. Let the constraint set the pace for the entire system. Stop or slow down all other initiatives to change. Remember, any effort which will not assist to reach the goal is wasted. Step 4, elevate the constraint. Now and only now has the time come to invest to expand the constraint. And now? The constraint now has moved somewhere else in your business system, like in road traffic. You open one bottleneck, makes the next bottleneck, moving somewhere else. A continuous circle of identify, exploit, subordinate, elevate. Tool number 3 is excellent for causal analysis if your business system hits a constraint. With that tool, we start from the undesired effect backwards, asking each element of our business system, again both internal and external, are you causing the undesired effect in any way? And why? What causes you to do so? Example, you, Mr. Sales Rep or Mrs. Sales Rep, are you causing our orders to drop? Yes. In which way? Well, I only see a customer every second day. And then, why? What makes you do this? Well, sales admin forces me to spend one full day per week filling in forms both in paper and on the computer. And you go further down the tree. In which functions make you do that? And so on. Typically, latest after having checked every element of our system, we arrive at the root cause of all these symptoms. Here is an example done by my students in an executive MBA course, which I gave at the University of Graz in Austria. The job was to find the root cause constraint for an entire organization. many elements in the business system. In such cases, the current reality tree is pretty large, and it takes patience and rigorous logic work to find the constraint. Experienced teams, however, can do this pretty fast. Now to management tool number 4, constraint-focused business plans. Such plans contain the vital few projects for our business to achieve our goal. If we are lucky, our system is not constrained and we can focus on removing foreseen obstacles. If our system is constrained, however, we must in addition focus on resolving that constraint. In practical work with managers, we found this one-page plan format for the logic tree very useful, with 2 alternatives. Some managers want to see it from right to left and others from left to right, but that makes no difference. Also, using the terms of today's management, what managers are used for, helps a little. We plan backwards from the goal and we first describe the critical success factors, the leading conditions under which will our system achieve our goal. Then we define the necessary conditions to be achieved for the critical success factors. Then we identify the obstacles which hinder us to achieve the necessary conditions. And then we define who will deliver what by when in form of an explicit commitment. Key is also that on that way, before we go to necessary conditions, we identify the competitors' plans. These are the obstacles, or if you want, the difficulties they create for us to achieve the critical success factors. If we see such obstacles, we must address them in our necessary conditions. If our competitor offers 20% lower price than we, one of the necessary conditions will have to say how we cope with that constraint or obstacle put in by the competitor. Designing such plans is exciting and fun, but also hard mental work. Logic trees don't come easy. But a plan left alone is like a letter to Santa Claus. It is like childlike belief in the good will of unknown powers. To actually benefit, managers must overcome 2 significant obstacles. Number 1, no plan survives encounter with reality, says Mark Watney in The Martian, and right he is. Executing the plan is by far more hard than writing it down. It's what you do what counts, not what you say you will do. Obstacle number 2 is that no plan is valid for more than 3 months. Everything in the business system changes continuously. Critical success factors, competitors, necessary conditions, obstacles, commitments, people, organization, and. So we must consider a plan just as a sprint, and at its end, take a step back and critically check every single element of our plan. Then use our insight to refresh the plan, make it ready for the next operational sprint. Plan, execute, check is a continuous circle to lead constraint-focused business planning. An essential aspect of 2 competing companies, the one will win who can spin the PEC cycle faster. In view of all this, business system, goal, constraint, resolving constraint, using constraint-focused business plans, what now should we do as managers? What principles should we adhere to? What should now managers do in order to make this happen? I've worked with a great number of operational leaders, and some of them were outstanding. And I think they follow 4 principles. Principle number 1, I focus all and everyone's efforts on one single goal, my system's throughput, nothing else. This and only this helps me to be alert when a constraint happens and quickly respond. It also helps me to prevent sub-optimization by letting everybody go after something else. And it helps me to focus on a few vital initiatives. I also personally use a goal chart for this purpose and show it, and I require everyone to do so. Good leaders show their goal chart at the beginning of every meeting and say, this is our goal, this is where we're going, how we're doing. Number 2, successful and good leaders never delegate leading the PEC cycle. Never, ever. They don't let their secretary do that. They understand that it's their prime job for operational leadership, that they must not delegate. They set and stick to a key event schedule. When I had a first boss who did this, I was pretty annoyed because he asked me, give me the key events of this fiscal year. And actually, I didn't have them listed. But he then convinced me and said, look, my friend Dieter, this is your business system's heartbeat. You are the heart. You need to drive this. So please write down and publish the key event schedule of your business system. I lead planning sessions. I do not delegate planning. I don't say go and make a plan and come back to me. I'm part of the planning. I discuss, I coach, I help, contribute it with all my expertise. I personally review all key projects, not every project in the company, but the projects that are in my operational plan, the essential ones which aim at resolving potential obstacles and the ones that resolve constraints. And I do that in quick reviews regularly, at least once a month. You know, one of my stars in management, he reviewed in critical times every Friday afternoon all his key projects. Finally, if I'm a leader of that quality, I lead the check sessions, which means the review sessions of my plan, and say, where did we succeed? Where did we have a problem? And where do we face constraints? And together we decide, and I lead the decision because I'm responsible for. Point number 3, I lead finding the constraints. If we have a serious constraint, I take the lead. In stormy weather, the captain's place is on the bridge, not somewhere else. I recognize that most constraints in my business system come from policies. That's a fact. And thus, I need to take the lead to resolve them. Nobody else can. And point number 4, I'm ruthless about reliability. I know that if my people don't deliver what they promise, we are in serious trouble to achieve our business system's goal, and such people are a serious obstacle. And if they are, and they won't change, I ask them to leave. So we have now come to the end of my presentation on constraint-focused management. And in the end, I wanted to recommend a few books which I personally like very much and which helped me a lot to understand more. First, on TOC, 2 books, Goldratt's The Goal and Detmer's The Logic Thinking Process. The Goal is a novel and describes the principles of TOC, as Goldratt calls it, of course, and how they should be applied in managing a business and resolving a business survival. Detmer's book is the manual on the logic thinking processes, the cause-effect approach to the problems and challenges business managers see. It's big, it's a manual, it contains many graphs, but it is not meant to be read as a novel, it is meant to be a dictionary, a wiki, if you want, of the methodologies that TOC uses. On constraint-focused leadership, I have written with my friend Bill Wurr a manual for how to do operational leadership, constraint-focused, surf the waves of opportunity. We describe the details, the reasons, and how step by step to design an operational plan, constraint-focused, of course, and then how to turn the PEC cycle. John Boyd, I also recommend. John Boyd was a very successful fighter pilot and designed the OODA loop. He never wrote a book about it, but you can find publications and records of his presentations about it.
The story here is that if two competitors meet, who wins? And John Boyd's point was, if you turn your peg cycle faster than your competitor, you will win. He calls it the OODA loop, but it's very similar. On systems, there are two books that I like very much. Bertalanffy's General Systems Theory is the classic. I mean, he wrote it in the 20s, but then, I mean, he forecasted so many things that later were developed and created the basic platform for all following people on systems theory. Maturana and Varela wrote a book, two biologists, by the way, wrote the book, The Tree of Knowledge, which describes the process and importance of cognition and how living systems do cognition, perform cognition, and in order to recognize situations, to use knowledge, and to apply knowledge in resolving problems. And finally, a book which I really recommend because it opens the eyes for how limited we are as human beings for planning and decision making, Thinking Fast and Slow by Kahneman. He won a Nobel Prize, by the way. And he compares that we have two ways of thinking. One is logic and the other is intuitive, and that the two should interact, because if we base our decisions only on intuition, we make a massive problem. Now, my friends, we've reached the end, and I hope you found it interesting to hear about constraint-focused management. And also, I wish that you can use some of what I described in your own professional work. I wish you all the best in that, and thank you for listening.